That is the first concern. The second concern is, hey, you broke my property. So, in my opinion, being mad over the latter is much worse than the former. I would much rather say, hey, you know, I got all your windows, but there's just this one window that, hey, what is up, guys? Cleaning PhD here, and in this one, we're doing windows, of course, and we're going to be using the water-fed pole here. We've basically just got some outside windows that we need to clean today. And of course, it's December and it is absolutely beautiful out here. So I want you guys to give me a like and subscribe. And yeah, if you get any information from this video, let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe. Let's get started. We're gonna go through the basic water-fed pole setup and cleaning. So get you guys clipped on here. Now, it is not super cold out for this time of year. It is about 35 or so. So you can clean windows with a water-fed pole as long as the water's not going to freeze on the windows. So that's pretty much how you determine whether or not you can use the water-fed pole. You just don't want the water to freeze. And so this is a house we do a few times a year. They enjoy the clean windows. So we're just going to set all this up. This brush is getting a little bit worn, but we're going to keep using it. It's hard to tell when exactly those brushes are no good anymore. Usually you can tell just if you're looking at a clean brush versus, or like a brand new brush versus one you've been using for a while. You can tell the difference that it's been used. But I've never been able to tell exactly when to scrap it, because they're kind of expensive. So you don't want to, you don't want to throw away a tool. You don't want to throw away a tool that you can still get life out of, So we're just cleaning a few of these windows. We're not cleaning all of them. But especially with a house like this is a pretty big property. And my hoses don't actually go all the way around if I just set up at any random water spigot. So you want to make sure you're at the appropriate water spigot where you can actually reach the whole house. So I make sure the water's flowing, and you attach this here. And now usually you want to test the water every single time. So that is something I actually forgot on the truck. I'm gonna have to go grab this. This is a big no-no, going back and getting tools from the truck. I don't like making too many trips. But what we're going to be using, super helpful tool here, is this TDS meter. And so what this does is it tells me how many particles are in the water, essentially, and it's measured in parts per million. So the general rule with water-fed pole is that you want less than 10 parts per million. Less than 5 is ideal. And especially around here in some areas, you really want it to be less than 5 or 0, ideally, because sometimes even at 10 parts per million, depending on where you are in the water, even that's not going to cut it. But what we do here is we've got the water fed pole right here, and we've hooked it up to the spigot up there, and we're just waiting for the water to flow out of the clean port here. So the dirty water, the hose water, comes in here, flows through the carbon filter, flows through the deionizer or the RO, and flows through this. I forget which, I think this is the deionizer and this is the RO, and then it should come out here when it's all done. For some reason it's taking some time, which is slightly concerning. Gonna really bump up the pressure there, turn on the water fully. Sometimes this thing can kink up, so you want to make sure this is flowing freely. That's the wastewater hose, and here we go. We've got this water flowing out, so we're gonna take our TDS meter here. You can see it's at 0 parts per million. You're just gonna fill up a cap full, and once you've got a cap full of the water, you're going to put it in, and you can see it still stays at 0 parts per million. So this water is good to go. It's flowing nicely. Gonna go ahead and turn off the water, and we're gonna hook up our brush here. And you can tell when you're measuring the TDS the amount of flow that's coming out from the clean water section here. You can obviously, you'll start to know when enough is coming out, because volume is a key factor when it comes to water fed pole. The amount of volume that the hose is bringing out is a huge factor, because that'll help you rinse the windows, that'll help you get a better result overall, because you want more water flow. So these are windows. Now, I know in some of my last videos that I've talked about oxidation and how it can really ruin the water fed pole, the oxidation. This is a house where the oxidation is pretty bad, but I do it anyways because it actually looks really good. I think over the years I've been able to get it not too bad in terms of the oxidation, because it'll actually over time you can brush off the oxidation. So I know I've said I really hate oxidation, but at the same time, some houses it'll look good even with some oxidation on the windows. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you there, but I really appreciate the fact that it works out well, because I would much rather use the water fed pole than anything else for these types of windows. So we've gotten started here. Now I do have videos on my channel about water fed pole technique, but we can go right through and kind of remind everybody what we're doing here. So I'm using the what's called the box method. And sometimes when you got stuff in your pockets, the swinging motion of your arms will hit that stuff in your pockets, so you gotta move it. So I'm using what's called the box technique, where you start at the very top of the window and you scrub back and forth, getting the frame. Then you want to do the other side of the window. You want to do the whole frame of the window essentially at first, starting with the top and the bottom, scrubbing back and forth and getting the sides and the frame. So once that's all scrubbed, you then want to work your way into the middle of the window, making sure to get all, especially since these are French panes, You want to make sure you get all the surface area here with a nice scrub of the brush. And the reason you do the top first is that you want to give that maximum time to drip and dry. Because the top is very suspect. It's a problem area with water-fed pole, where the top area is often known to be the area that drips and it leaves white streaks on the window. So at all costs, you want to get that top frame cleaned as fast as possible, and you want to have the maximum time between cleaning that top frame and rinsing the window, so you can give that actually a good amount of time to drip and dry as much as it can. Because with water-fed pole, there's a few different areas of thought on the water-fed pole. There's kind of the area where you want to clean everything as thoroughly as possible to get all the dirt out of every single crevice. And there's also the theory that you want to pretty much limit the amount of water you're using, and you want to use the minimum amount of water to clean the window so that water doesn't get shoved up in different areas and drip later on. And I'm a big fan of the first theory rather, where I don't especially want to spend all day at a window cleaning and getting every single crevice and kind of, scrubbing the siding even and the whole frame and everything. So if you've got all day and it's a very thorough job that you're doing, that can certainly work. Cleaning all the nooks and crannies and everything incredibly thoroughly. And obviously you want to clean stuff thoroughly. That's not, that's almost never in question. Obviously you want to clean stuff thoroughly. However, whoa. Thought we lost water there. However, you just don't want to get a whole lot of water in areas that are likely to drip later on, because obviously if the windows drip later on, then you're coming back for some touch-ups. Most likely. Sometimes not. All depends on the customer. But you don't want drips in either case. In either case, you want to strive to not have drips, because you might say, hey, if things look bad, the customer might just call me back. However, that surprisingly is not the case at all, because some people, and I think in fact a lot of people, will be like this, where things don't look good, maybe about this, and this applies to a lot of different things. This applies to restaurants and, pretty much any service. Things might not be the best in terms of service or in terms of the experience, or in this case, in terms of the window cleaning. But they're not going to complain, because that's just not what they do. And I'm sure you've all been there at one point or another where maybe the service was not the best, maybe something about the experience was not the best, but and you didn't leave a bad review, or you just didn't go back there at all, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm actually trying to look up because occasionally you don't talk to the client right when you get to a job, and then you're in the middle of the job, and sometimes you second guess exactly what you're doing there. But just had to double check that. We're just doing the river facing windows, so we're not doing all the exterior windows here. So just had to confirm on the work order, because I've done free work before, and then you're an hour into the job and you're like, hey, we're actually not supposed to be cleaning this. Uh-oh. So yes, when in doubt, check the work order. Gonna try to move this TV out. These TVs, they're always a little, you never know, Oh, uh-oh. You just never know how much water. Obviously you don't want to get much water on them, but I mean, they're outside TVs. Looks like this got repainted. This pergola here, it's looking a lot better. I remember before, it was, when I was here, some paint was chipping off of it, but they must have gotten it repainted. Looks great. And these can be very tricky to work around, these pergolas here. You just do the best you can. But with the water-fed pole, it makes it, I guess in this scenario, it's a blessing and a curse, because if you didn't clean it with a water-fed pole, you actually wouldn't be able to get these windows traditionally. Because A, they're French panes, and B, the pergola makes it incredibly difficult with pole work to get your pole actually in there. So, yes. I'm getting a little hot even, which is, oh man, which is unexpected. Water is just dripping in my eye a little bit. Yeah, that was unexpected. I don't think I'd actually get hot on this job. But instead of going back all the way to the car, I'm just simply going to take off a layer here. There we go. There we go. Much better. Yeah, something you learn when you're in a cold, chilly climate. You learn about layering up your clothes. So when you get too hot, you can just pop off a layer and get right back to it. And with these windows, you want to get the right angle on your brush. I can already tell with this window, the brush angle is not ideal. It'll work, but you kind of learn as you go with water-fed pole the correct angle of the brush that you need to get the most amount of bristles splayed out on the glass. Because at certain angles of the brush, maybe only the top portion of the brush will actually be contacting the window, or maybe the bottom portion. So you just want to get your brush in an angle where pretty much the middle of the brush is what's touching the window. So pretty much all the bristles on the brush are flush with the window. Then you get the most amount of scrubbing power that way. And you can see I'm just working along. I don't actually always do the box method. The box method is a good rule of thumb. It's almost like, I'll use a music analogy. You learn these scales for a foundation. You learn your scales and your keys as a foundation of the music that you're playing. But the ultimate goal is to forget all that. So occasionally with the tips that I give, it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do situation, where the main goal of the box method is not to be the number one fastest way to clean the windows. No. It's actually to give you a framework and a theory and some sort of rule of thumb you can follow to get great results. So that is the main goal with rules like this, like the box method, is that it's just going to give you a framework for what you want to do, but it's not actually the end-all be-all. The main reason that you want to do the box method is that you want to scrub the frames first and then scrub the middle of the window, and you want to make sure you get all the surface area. So that's the main thing, is that you just want to scrub the frames first and make sure you get the entire surface area of the window. So that can be accomplished in a few different ways, but the box method is an easy way to remember exactly what you've scrubbed and kind of give you a goal when you approach the window, so you're not kind of exploring the territory every single time. It's not an exploratory process. It's more of a, okay, here's the rules. I'm gonna follow these rules and it'll work out great. So like, for instance, when I have workers, occasionally I'll tell them to do something and they'll see me do it a different way. And I have to either remind myself or remind them, hey, you know, do as I say, not as I do. Once you get a firm technique and a firm foundation, all right, you can definitely go to town and kind of do your own thing. But you can't do that to start out because you'll forget, you know, what you're doing. You'll scrub the middle, you'll scrub the bottom first. You won't exactly have the technique down. And as you can see, when I'm adjusting this, the farther I'm standing out from the window, the more parallel to the pole, that the more steep the angle has to be. So out here will be a much steeper angle than right here. This will be, if you're basically standing, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 feet from the wall or the house, it'll be a very right angle, basically a 90-degree angle if you're standing right next to the house. So with these double hung windows, you want to do the top windows first and then do the bottom windows after that, just to give them time to dry and drip, because even the dripping from the top sash will drip onto the it'll, as you can see here, it's all dripping, and it actually drips and splashes back on the window. So you just want to make sure it's done doing that. That's how much time to let it, let it dry before you start doing the window again. And it's not a guarantee that it'll spot or anything, but it's just stuff that makes it more likely. So this is stuff you can really remember, especially when you're doing a new house where you're not exactly sure what the windows will look like and how they'll take to the water-fed pole. That's almost like a bit of a theory term there, is like how do the windows take to the water-fed pole? I like that way of phrasing it because it's so true. Some windows take much better. They lend themselves well to the water-fed pole. And some windows, not so much. So I think especially the first time you're doing windows, or if you're not so sure how they'll look, you want to play it way closer to, play it by the book, as they'll say. You want to use all these rules to your advantage, and you don't want to skimp around too much. You want to be pretty detailed, because it's better to go a little slower and do way fewer touch-ups and have things look overall better than to go a little faster and have to touch things up later and whatnot. Obviously, it's better to not have to go back and touch things up. And it's nice because it really is soothing. Cleaning the windows and just having the water drip down. Quite soothing. So as you can see, I've done all the top of the double hung windows all the way across. And now I'm coming back and I'm going to do the bottom section of the windows. I skipped a couple over on this side, just because I've done enough. You don't want to go too far in one direction and have to walk back and forth too much, so I'd rather just, take a modest section of the house and kind of chunk it away rather than doing a big old section and, the potential for forgetting which windows you've done and whatnot. And the sun over on this part of the house is pretty intense. And so that can actually be an advantage with the water-fed pole, where the windows are drying nice and easily for you, and they dry quite quickly, so you can actually see how the windows are going to clean up. Because it's best, if you can, it's best to always check your work and check the windows. And the way you check the windows is, you can do this from the ground. It's better to do this inside, but you can do this from the ground. You actually come up to the window and you try to catch it in all sorts of light and all sorts of angles, and you can see different spots on the windows or if the window is spotting. So I move over to the right, I look at it at that angle, I move over to the left, look at it at this angle, try to move up and catch it in different angles and different light, and that'll actually expose anything on the window that needs to be touched up or addressed. So that's how you look at windows. You also can do this on the inside of houses, where you do the exact same thing. So you look at the window left and right, you look at it up and down, you try to catch it in different lights, and you'll find a method of doing this that's quite effective, and you can do it pretty easily. So yeah, that's how you basically check to see if the windows are clean or not. You can do something like that. And we've got some house cleaners inside. Gotta love it. These people really love the clean windows and the clean stuff, and I can respect it because I like clean stuff too. So as you can see, this area had a screen on it, and so I actually, what you can do with screens, you sometimes can clean the window with a screen on and sometimes not. Overall, it's not going to be as good, but you can, just go lightly on the screen like this, and you're basically just kind of rinsing the window off with pure water. You're not doing a whole lot, but I think it might look a little bit better doing it this way. It's better than nothing, I'd say. Better than nothing. Sometimes people will leave screens on the windows and they don't care. So you just kind of do the best you can. It's not going to look perfect, but I think it's going to be better than nothing. Exactly like that. So we'll leave these bottom windows because you can see the water just is dripping down from there. So we just want to give these time to dry. But I just want to prepare those windows because you don't want to get all the way to the end and realize you just have this section left and you have to stand there and wait for the top windows to dry. So you want to make sure you're kind of doing all these top windows in a line and coming back and doing the bottoms in a way where it's drying and you're not having to sit there and wait. You always want more windows to clean while you're waiting for stuff to dry, so you don't actually have to sit there and wait for it to dry. But occasionally that can certainly happen if you don't plan it out right, or maybe it's a new house you haven't done before. So, but it's a good rule of thumb to have. And these windows are at a bit of an angle. Or sometimes, with this pergola, they make it so it can be a little bit tough to clean the sills of the windows. Uh-oh, TV. Oh, I don't want this thing to break. Big old TV here. Yeah, they say they're outdoor TVs, but you can never trust them too much. Alright, so because we're standing so far out, this hot tub here is making us stand so far out, we're going to change the angle, get a little bit of a steeper angle, and not too much. You don't want to go like all or nothing. Just a couple clicks from the ground makes a big difference when we're extended onto the window. So you don't actually need to make macro adjustments, just little micro adjustments to keep that angle, the brush angle, correct on the window. So we've talked about the box method. We've talked a little bit about the filters and the hoses, how to hook things up. Talked about TDS and different techniques for cleaning the windows. Something I want to mention is when you're rinsing the windows, you want to stay off the top about 2 inches of the window when you're rinsing, because the water, it's just so easy for the water to shoot up into the top frame and drip down later. So we just want to avoid that as much as possible. And the water is already running down, so it's not like it's a big disadvantage or it's going to make the window not clean or anything. You're just not shooting as much water right on that section of the window. And it avoids getting water up into the top area there where you don't want it, because that can collect dirty water, or the water can collect dirt rather, and it'll drip down the window. So you do not want that. Not at all. And while you're up here cleaning the windows, you can see the brush. You just want to brush the frames a little bit, or the sills there. Obviously you want to brush the frames, but you want to brush the sills there as well. And it can be difficult to get the bottom sill totally clean, just because the brush angle, it's a totally opposite angle to the window, so it's not like the bristles are all splayed out in an even fashion. I'm just trying to look at these windows as I'm going, just to make sure they're looking good. This one is just a bit suspect. I can't remember if I even rinsed this window or not, but I'm gonna give it another rinse just in case. Famous last words, just in case. I don't think I rinsed this window. We can go back in the tape, but I have a feeling I did not. I'm a little bit sleep deprived. Uh-oh, we definitely splashed the top. I just saw, yep, you can see water splashing down because we accidentally hit the top of the window. We're gonna have to come back and give that a final rinse. Yeah, once you hit the top and you see water dripping down and splashing, that is time to move on to the next window and give that some more time to dry off. Because especially on a big picture window, you don't want any funny business going on there, because that's a real obvious window to tell if there's funny business. You know, it's not like a random window in the corner. That's a main window right there. Oh, man. I can't remember the last time I cleaned windows or water-fed pole in December, at least. Holy cow. It's a blessing, you know? Oh yeah, they're definitely having some work here. I can see some of these boards laying here. They're definitely working on the pergola. And that's, you know, that's a new word I kind of learned this year. I swear people have been saying it to me, customers have been saying it to me for a long time, but maybe I learned the word a couple years ago. But I swear somebody mentioned it and I had to look it up. They're like, can you pressure wash my pergola. I was like, wait a minute, what is a pergola? But it's exactly what this thing is here. Something I thought about is that I might be scrubbing the windows for too long with the water-fed pole. I probably go a little bit too thorough on it, which isn't a big problem, but it's always hard to tell how much scrubbing is enough, how much is too much. Because sometimes I reduce the amount of scrubbing and then more stuff starts popping up on the windows when I'm checking them. Like there's just hard matter and stuff that'll stay on the windows if you're not scrubbing properly. And when you're rinsing the windows, you want to not be too far away with the jets, the rinse jets, because the windows, the jets will splash way more water if the jets are too far away. They'll just splash way more water. So you just want to be careful about that aspect. And so these are very tough. I cannot stand on this or anything like that. I could bring a ladder over here, but for right now we're just going to brute force this thing. It just forces your arms to have a great workout. But you know, you think about it, like I could go get, and you guys, you can't see this, but that's all right. Just know that I'm working on these windows up here. I'll try to angle it in a certain way. When you come across a situation like this, so like I could go get my step ladder and have, you know, a taller angle on this window, and that would indeed help the fatigue a little bit. It'll help the angle. I don't think it'd really help the cleaning per se, because I'm going to clean it well no matter what. But you got to think, is that little bit of ease worth going and getting the ladder? Because then you got to climb up and down on the ladder. You've got to load the ladder on and off the truck, and you've got to carry the ladder around, and you've got to make more trips back and forth. So the question is that worth it? And a lot of times, you know, I just take the L and get a little bit more of a arm workout. Because it seriously is an arm workout when you're working with the pull fully extended. And we are way out from the windows, so yes. Ooh. And this is where it helps to be able to use both hands. The problem is one of my hands is just a bit stronger than the other. And this brush, oh. See, we are very far out from the window, so we're gonna have to make this brush angle a little bit steeper. But again, I'm just doing one click. So I don't want to overshoot it, don't want to undershoot it. And I'm actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to clean the 2 top double hung windows first, just to give those drip time. So I can actually clean this whole section of windows at once. I'll clean those and let them drip, then clean the center one, and then move back to the outsides. Once they've drip dried, and they've got some workers in there. They must be, you know, some people, they're always doing something, always doing home improvements. And I can respect it, you know. I'm just not used to it because, you know, depends on what family you come from. If you're coming from a different socioeconomic background than your customers, then it's just interesting to see what they're spending their money on. And obviously you don't know what they're spending their money on, but you can just see when you arrive, you know, and you can see from year to year. Like, man, they're getting the pergola upgraded, painted, getting the house upgraded and painted. That's pretty cool, you know. Whoa. This is I wish I could give you guys a better angle, but I've already thought about this problem. A chest mount is just much better in terms of concealability and ease of use. The chest mount, your angles are going to be a little bit worse because obviously your head is where all the action is, you know, that's where you're going to be facing, not necessarily your chest. Usually your chest, yeah, but like a situation like this, not always. And I'm just doing the best I can. This is a tough window. Ooh. I just had a pretty good arm workout yesterday too, biceps with a pull day, so my arms are feeling pretty sore. Leg day today should be nice and fun. Yeah, sorry, these angles, not always the best. If I come along on this side, it's funny, when I switched my right arm on top of the water fed pole, you guys get a much better angle here with what I'm doing. It's still not great just with your body and how holding the big old pole makes your body go. Yeah, this is becoming fatiguing. But once I get done with these, it's pretty much smooth sailing. It's tough when you're putting a lot of force into the pole. It can like snap up and make a big noise on the window. So I'm just trying to not, it always sounds louder on the outside too, but I'm trying not to get a big noise by smacking the frames. Oh man, and it is a freaking workout. All right, one more window here. Oh. You know, and that's another thing. Water-fed pull can be uniquely fatiguing, especially on your arms. It can be quite uniquely fatiguing. Ooh. Oh man. And especially with the hog's hair brush, it can feel very sticky on the window, which is a good thing for clinging onto dirt, but it's a really bad thing if your arms are sore. It's also something, in all seriousness, it's a big physical restriction on window cleaning, because ladders are much more dangerous. But the water-fed pull, it can be quite fatiguing on the arms and such. So you want to just be aware of that. See, and this is something you never want to just pull this cord, or hose rather, because it always gets stuck on something. You think you've just got a clear path, but it always seems to get stuck on something. All right, so back, and we're gonna clean these top windows here, or the bottom of the top windows rather, bottom of the double hungs. And that will be the last top windows to get. I feel bad they've got to clean these windows with microfiber cloths. That is a tough time. Believe me, I've tried it. It's definitely an arm workout. It makes me wonder, have I been replaced on the inside windows? You know, it does make sense if you got like a cleaning crew to have them clean some inside windows for you. But depending on how dirty the windows are, you're not going to get the same results as with a squeegee. Obviously, these windows are really well maintained though. So, just cleaning the outside professionally and having the inside done by a cleaning team, it makes sense. And these windows are looking pretty dang good. Pretty dang good. You just want to continually check the windows just to see if you missed something. See, I think this angle, this will be perfect for the GoPro. This is going to be prime time window cleaning here. So hopefully you guys stuck around this far, because this is a great angle for the water-fed pull action cam combo. And it feels great. It's almost like you've been on hard mode cleaning the second story windows, and now it's easy mode on the bottom story windows. because the pole is not as extended. Man, there's something wrong with my valve here. Is it called the univalve? The thing that turns on and off the window or the water. The valve inside my pole. I think something about it is malfunctioning. So you can see this white stuff coming off the window. That is indeed the oxidation. And no wonder, because these windows are just baking in the sun all day and all night, all year. But like I said, I've done this house several times and they always clean up great. So I'm not worried about it in the slightest. Switching arms here. I highly recommend that you use both of your arms whenever you can. I know one is going to feel more awkward than the other, but especially if you're new to window cleaning, they're both going to feel a little bit awkward. Or if you're old to window cleaning, if you've been doing it a while, and you don't know how to use both arms, it kind of is something that can mix it up. You can literally change up your whole setup to be a left-handed setup and clean the windows that way, clean a whole house that way, go a whole day. Instead of grabbing your squeegee with your right hand, you grab it with your left hand always. And that's actually what I did for weeks and weeks and months. I switched my whole setup, so my belt was on the opposite side, my BOAB, my bucket on a belt was on the other side, my towels were switched sides, so everything was reversed essentially. And it helps me to really become proficient with my left hand and be way more comfortable, because there's a lot of situations where using your left hand is just going to be a immediate benefit in a lot of different window cleaning scenarios. Being able to use your left hand is a huge benefit, not just from a technical point of view, like, oh, it's going to help you. It literally saves you time and it saves you money. No, I'm just kidding. It also saves you big in the fatigue department, and that's something you don't realize until you get to your 30s. The fatigue department, which I'll name it here, and something I've kind of been talking about in some of my videos is managing fatigue, and it's something I've been thinking about recently, is more of that topic, because I think I might be getting golfer's elbow or something. The fatigue. Sometimes you can just get little things with your body where, it just little twinges here and there. And being able to switch arms makes it so you're not putting all the stress and force on one arm, or one joint. Because if you use your left hand all day to do one task, maybe you're lucky, you're gifted genetically, or maybe you've got enough strength, or your tendons are strong enough or something where that will never affect you. And obviously I'm not a doctor or anything, so take this all with a huge grain of salt. I just know from experience, and oh, look at that. I just know for a fact, if you're just using one arm for years and years, it's not going to be ideal in terms of your stress, your joint fatigue, all that sort of stuff. So practice using both arms early on so you can gain the technique and become comfortable with it, and it'll help you later on very easily. Very nice. So just to kind of reiterate things on these windows here, using the box method, we're scrubbing the top of the window just like so, back and forth a few times. We're going to then go onto the frames. You can go from the top to the right or the top to the left here, and we're scrubbing the frame down just like this. And then we're going to scrub the bottom frame just like this. And then to complete the box, we're going to scrub the opposite frame just like this. Just a few times, just giving it a few passes. And so with French panes like this, with these middle grids here, since these are so oxidized, and you know, just in general, you want to pretty much treat the grids like another frame. So just quickly scrub the grid up and down, back and forth. Then you're going to work into the windows here, doing a similar thing. The windows, since you've done the frames already, you don't have to go side to side on the top. Just go back and forth, just completing the pass of the middle of the window. And then to rinse, you come up to the top. You want to stay away from the top few inches of the window. Bring the brush off the window as little as you can, but obviously sometimes it's difficult. You just want to stay close to the window without the bristles touching the window, because the bristles are what have the dirt on them. And then you just want to rinse the window down just like so, rinsing it a couple times until it all looks good and there's no more dirt on the window. Same with here. So you can see these drops of dirty water on the top. I'm just gonna lightly brush that, and hopefully that'll get some of the water off of there and make it so it's not dripping on us. So we're gonna go to the top of the window, clean the frame here, back and forth. We're gonna come down to the left side or the right side, scrub the frame on the side, back and forth. You can switch up the angle of the brush just like this, going from this here to this here, and just go up and down. And then we're gonna do the bottom of the window just like so, back and forth, and then the other frame up and down just like this. And so we don't rinse the frames just because we don't want to get so much water on them, but the water is running continuously out of the brush, so it's going to be rinsing in some regard. And we're going to scrub the middle of the window. These picture windows are nice and fun. And now we're just going to do a rinse starting at the top, coming back and forth in a smooth motion, making sure to get all the little particles of dirt and such rinsed all the way down the window. Just like so. Perfect. And since we've cleaned the top of these double hung windows here, I'm sure they've had enough time to drip, and I actually don't see them dripping anymore, so we're going to right away move to the bottom of these two double hung windows. And you can see, I made this point earlier in one of my other videos, is this white stuff here, that is the oxidation coming off of the windows. And occasionally that'll stain decks and things. So before you leave, you just want to try to rinse that off as best as you can. And obviously it depends on the client. I've had people freak out. I've had people be chill, not care. I've had people not notice. So it all depends on the client. It's best just to take action. I feel like in business, it's best to take the action that'll appease, that's likely to appease the most amount of people. So most of the time, people are not going to freak out about that. So not expecting yourself to clean it 100%, and it's not going to damage the deck. It's just more of an aesthetic thing at that point, where it will rinse off with the rain and such, but it'll just look like some sort of white stuff on the deck. So you just want to be careful and, use common sense, but that's usually a cop-out. So I just try to act in a way where you're likely to appease the most amount of people, and then maybe when you have special circumstances or something you're aware of, you can change your actions then to accommodate the person that's in front of you. But just as a general rule of thumb, like if somebody was cleaning my place, it wouldn't bother me a whole lot, but I really wouldn't want to see it. So I'm just going to operate in that way, where I'm just going to rinse it off. I'm not going to spend like 10 hours there trying to rinse it all off and pressure wash their deck. But I'll just spend, 30 seconds just kind of rinsing stuff a little bit, just to cover all my bases. And then if somebody was really annoyed by it, then I could rinse it some more for them. But yeah, this is all stuff you want to be aware of when you're on a customer's property. I'd say in a lot of cases you want to treat it just like your own property, if you're respectful towards your property. So I know people that they don't really care about their stuff, but I certainly, I guess it's hard to gauge if like somebody's conscientiousness versus other people's, how much are they going to care about stuff. It's kind of a difficult topic to broach, but in general, you probably want to, especially when the customer is watching you, which it's funny, you might have slightly different behavior when a customer is watching you versus when they're not watching you. And I can give a prime example of this. When you're in a customer's house, probably standing on their furniture is something you want to ask about. However, if they're standing there looking right at you. However, if you're by yourself, do you really need to try to concern yourself with asking about that? If you know no harm is going to come to the furniture, it's just like a wooden stool or something, or it's a couch and you just want to step on the couch with your booties on, of course, or with socks on. That is something I think is not, it's quite a reasonable move, quite a reasonable action, but it can upset people if, depending on what they think about you. If they're kind of thinking you're dirty and kind of weird, they literally might go get a step stool for you instead, and they might prefer that. So, So that's why it all depends on, the customer, and maybe if they're watching you or not, things like this. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of psychological game to play, figuring out what people are comfortable with in terms of what you're doing on their property, what they're not comfortable with. In general, I think you just want to treat the property as if it's yours, or maybe be a bit gentler. I'd say even be a bit gentler as if it's your property, because for instance, if a screen or anything, any sort of window, any sort of piece of the customer's property feels like it's going to break, that's the point where I stop. So, like on my property, since I rent and my landlord will fix things, I'm not super duper concerned with if I'm trying to fix something and I'm like, there's maybe a 50-50 that this will break. In my case, at my apartment, I don't necessarily care about that because it needs to get fixed anyways. So I want it to be fixed. I'm trying to fix it. And if it breaks, that's going to be on that's not going to be on me, essentially. You know, and now I'm losing track of what windows I've cleaned. I think I've cleaned these, but I'll just give them one more pass just in case. You know, when you're talking and you're having fun cleaning windows, you can forget what you've been doing. We're just about done with this job here. Unfortunately, the sun's kind of going away, which I've got another window cleaning job, so we want that sun if we can. But yeah, we're finishing up here, cleaning a few more windows. So yeah, with the customer's property, I guess you just do the best you can in terms of figuring out what they're comfortable with. And you can definitely learn over time what people are comfortable with, what they aren't comfortable with. And I've definitely learned, I know customers, some people, they're just, some people are a little weird, okay? And you don't have to appease every single person. I think that's totally unrealistic. There's going to be people who pretty much freak out no matter what you're doing. And those people, it just is what it is. But for people who are, more reasonable, just treating the property as if it's yours, but with a little bit of note of caution, as in if something's going to break, you pretty much just stop right away if something's going to break, rather than maybe pushing the limit just a bit. To me, if a window doesn't feel good or anything about it doesn't feel good, I immediately stop and say, hey, do I have permission to proceed here? Do we have permission to proceed? Because then it's on the customer as to whether they want to engage in that risk. So it might just be the next person who touches the window is the person who breaks the property. So it doesn't really matter if it's the window cleaner or it's the client. It's going to break no matter who touches it. However, if you may know that in your head, and you may be going along and just saying to yourself, it's fragile, it might break, but I'm just going to try to clean it and see what happens. That might be your thought process. But once you have broken the customer's property without forewarning them, you're now in a slightly different situation where you now have to admit that you've broken something, okay? So that I think is a much worse scenario to be in. Like, hey, I messed up, I broke your stuff. That's a much worse scenario to be in than saying beforehand, hey, this property is fragile, it seems likely to break. I'll give you the option. Do you want me to do it? Because I'll be happy to do it. And I'll do it very carefully. I'll do it as carefully as possible for you. I can do this for you. However, there's a risk of breakage. There's a risk of something breaking. Would you like to handle this situation yourself, or would you like me to do it? So now, before you've even touched the property, this is putting the decision in the customer's court as to what they're going to do. Does the customer want to try to finagle the screen out of the window? And sometimes, they'll try to do that. And they'll be like, oh, what are you talking about? The screen's easy to take out. They'll try it, and they'll instantly know exactly what you're talking about. They're like, oh, yes, this is a bad screen. I'm going to let the professional try to handle it. He was right all along. Because occasionally they'll just be like, oh, what, a stupid window cleaner can't take out the screen? Are you serious? And maybe they took out the screen 10 years ago when they were cleaning their windows, but they haven't done that since, and the screens become so fragile and brittle that it just crumbles in your hand the second you touch it. So that's an option. And a lot of times, if they go for that, they instantly find out, oh, hey, this guy's a professional, he knows exactly what he's talking about. The screen is crap, or, it's brittle, it's fragile. The piece of property, my piece of property, is fragile and brittle, so he was indeed right about that. So that is another option. There's an option where the customer doesn't want to deal with it. So maybe it's a storm pane that are very difficult to take out, and the storm panes are risking taking them out risks breaking them. It might just be a better decision just to leave it alone completely, because risking breaking a window is not a great risk, even if you forewarn everybody in the situation that the window might break. It's really not good to have a broken window on your hands, because you got to say that to the customer, hey, I broke one of your windows. You guys got to figure out what's going on. And like, unless you signed a contract with them saying, hey, this window is probably going to break, you could still be in some deep annoyances, just breaking windows in general, between Google reviews and, you know, he said, she said kind of stuff, and, you know, compensation, and, you know, I didn't agree to this, you didn't agree to that, I didn't know things were going to break, you know, X, Y, Z. That can all happen. And what I'm saying is it's just best to avoid that 100% and completely, if you can. That would be my preference, indeed, is to just skip all that drama. Skip all that drama. So sometimes, even when the property is just slightly fragile and it seems like it might break, and the customer's like, oh, just go for it, it doesn't matter, I don't care. Even then, I'm usually pretty sus. Because, you know, I just don't want to break stuff at all. That's my MO. That's my modus operandi, is just, I don't want to break anything while I'm on a customer's property. So that's kind of my main goal, my overarching goal. And from there stems other things. You can have, you know, ancillary goals to that. And I do have many of those. So, hey, you might warn the customer that, you know, this property is fragile and it might break. And they're still like, hey, just go for it, it doesn't matter. Even then, sometimes I question that. And I'm like, hey, even if you don't care a whole lot, it's actually probably going to break. So I'm going to go ahead and use my better judgment and just forego this whole endeavor, because, you know, and sometimes they can get mad about that, like, oh, what do you mean you can't clean the window? Are you serious? And you can do the best you can do, but, you know, it's almost like at some point you want to really mitigate everything that you see. It's almost like you're diving into a smaller problem to eliminate the bigger problem that you see in the future. So the small problem is the customer's mad you didn't clean every single window to perfection. That is the first concern. The second concern is, hey, you broke my property. So, in my opinion, being mad over the latter is much worse than the former. I would much rather say, hey, you know, I got all your windows, but there's just this one window that was not super, it's not in super good shape, ma'am or sir. I'm sorry about that, but it's just true. The window's not in great shape. The screen's not in great shape. I'll give you the option to try to take it out yourself if you want. And I know you want me to take it out, but it's honestly too much of a risk, and I'm afraid I'm going to break it, and I don't want to break your property. So that's what I would rather do. You know, if they get, like, if they're in some sort of different state of mind where they don't care, they're like, hey, just break it, I don't care if it breaks. So, sometimes I'll go for that, you know. If the customer is just like for instance, if you're pressure washing something, or they want you to pressure wash something, and you're like, hey, I can pressure wash this, but it's fragile, man. Something about it might break, or something like that. it's fragile. And they're like, you know, I don't care. I've kind of always wanted it broken. Some people like they want you to pressure wash their deck, and there's paint that's chipping off the deck. So if you pressure wash it, the paint will chip off, and it really won't look that good. So you explain to the customer, hey, if I pressure wash this, the paint's just going to be coming off, and it's actually not going to look that good. Do you want me to proceed? Some customers are like, hey, I was planning on repainting my deck anyways. Go ahead and do it. I don't care if it looks like crap. And I'm like, all right, I'll go ahead and do it for you. So, you know, it's a lot of dependencies really in this situation. It's a lot of customer and human interaction. You've got to read, you know, the signals of the customer and history with them, and you know, have they freaked out before? Has this ever happened before? Do you trust them? Are they brand new? What kind of risk do you want to take on? So it's really like, it's almost like a fractal of different outcomes happens here when you're just dealing with this one situation. So let's see, we've gone over the customer wants you to do it anyways, and sometimes refusing. So yeah, there's a lot of situations here. And I forget exactly how we came to this immediate topic, but in short, yes, you want to be looking out for stuff that can potentially damage the customer's property, and you know, go ahead and eliminate that risk from the beginning. So I would rather be telling a customer, hey, this seems fragile and might break, versus having to tell a customer, hey, I broke your property. One is just way easier to tell somebody than the other. Although I have learned some techniques for damage control, and maybe that should be a whole new video, because there's ways to damage control when you're on site and maybe you've made a mistake. Maybe you have broken some property. There's things you can say and things you can do to kind of mitigate that, and maybe give yourself better chances that you won't have to pay for it in the future or at that time at all. You never want to like hide anything. I think honesty and truth is the best policy, 100%. So in all these cases, you never want to like hide that you've broken something from the customer. I say if you are truly negligent and you break something, you know, it's best just to own up and confess to that, because, you know, it's maybe even 50-50 that the customers are like, hey, you've done a lot of work for me. You haven't broken anything before. I can tell this was an honest mistake. Maybe they're like, oh, you know, I never cared about that object. Maybe it's like some garden gnome ornament or something like that, where they don't actually care that much about it, and you are freaking out over nothing the whole time. So that can happen, but just in general, it is best to be transparent with it, you know, to just be open with it and say, hey, I messed up here. I broke your property one way or another. What can I do to remedy this? You want $50? Do you want me to take $50 off the bill? Do you want me to paint your door? Do you want me to fix this thing? Do you want me to buy you a new trinket or garden gnome or whatever? A lot of times they just don't care, like whatever it is. I'm very conscientious to the point where I think they're going to notice everything, and I think they're going to care about everything. So I'm like overly sensitive and cautious to these scenarios, because I just don't like, you know, who likes breaking people's property? You know, you just look unprofessional. You want them to call you back, and maybe, you know, you don't want that to be something that determines whether they call you back or not. Maybe you did a fantastic job on everything else, but you just handled this one situation poorly, and that really stunted your chances with this client. So you just want to be aware of this sort of thing, where the ways you interact with a customer in these scenarios can really make or break your relationship you have to the customer in general. You want to play these situations very carefully, and that's why I'm always cautious, because sometimes, you know, I come up to the customer and I'm like, hey, I've got a situation here. I don't really like this situation. I don't know what to do here. Can I get your thoughts and opinions on it? And sometimes they're like, why are you coming to me? Just like work and just do your thing. I don't really care. However, I would rather that than the opposite. And I don't go overboard with it. I'm not like, oh, I'm so scared in the customer's house and I'm going to like ask them if I can clean every single window, or it's nothing like that. It's just, I'd rather be, if there's a question, if I'm in doubt, it's like I learned this year actually, and this is something I should have been taught in driver's ed, but I've just really accepted it at this point. When the light turns yellow, you've got the option to step on the brake or step on the gas, or like deliberate and then do one or the other. I am just defaulting to stepping on the brake, all right? And I think, I wish more people would do that. When I see the yellow light, I pretty much just default to stepping on my brake, you know? And that might annoy some people. Maybe some people are like, hey, my car is fast enough, or like it's never been a problem for me, or, you know, what have you. And, you know, that's all fine and dandy. Perhaps it's never been a problem for you. But the one time it is a problem for you, it's going to result in a massive crash where maybe somebody's dead. It's a big bad situation. So in my opinion, that is analogous to this window cleaning example, where when you come across a situation, maybe a screen's not coming out and you're like, you know, maybe with 15, like you're pulling on the screen, it's not coming out. Hey, maybe with 15% more pressure on this screen, it'll come out. But you're also sensing that the screen's a little bit brittle. It's been baking in the sun a little bit. It's a little bit warped. Maybe you're also thinking, if I give this screen 15% more power, there's also a 50% chance it's going to break. All right. So now you're in a different scenario where it's either the screen might break, or maybe you can get the screen out. And like, is it worth getting the screen out at that point? Like, just ask yourself that. I get it. I want everything to be super nice for the customer. I don't want any complaints. I want everything to look gorgeous. I don't want to have to come to the customer and say, hey, there's an aspect of your property that I was not able to handle today. What should I do about it? That's almost, that's a little bit embarrassing too. And depending on the customer, they're going to be thinking, is this guy not qualified? He doesn't know how to take out screens, doesn't know what he's doing. That is an option, but I think weighing all the factors we've talked about, I think it's still worth the risk that the customer, might not think you're qualified. They might think this or that about you. And that's, I'm happy with that. I'm fine in that scenario. Maybe they think I'm not competent. I would rather that than breaking screens, breaking windows, coming to the customer, because they might think the same. They might think the same exact thing about somebody who's breaking their property and not warning them. So obviously the customer is not considering all this. So so they're not really going to be thinking about all this ancillary stuff or this auxiliary stuff, this tertiary kind of factors. They're not going to be thinking about all that per se. So that's why I'm running through these scenarios with you. But like I said from the beginning, it's about averages. It's almost like, it almost brings us back right to the very first point of this whole window cleaning video, the box method. It just stresses a rule that you can apply to a lot of different types of situations, okay? It's giving you a general rule of thumb to handle these scenarios. And I think that is the main important factor here, is just equipping you guys with rules that will get you through, 98% of situations. These rules here, they're not good for every single situation, and stuff will come up, unique situations will come up, but most humans will act pretty similarly given these scenarios, and there might just be, a few different outcomes that people will give you. It reminds me, of like debate and philosophy. That's also a topic I'm very much into, debate and philosophy. And once you, so there's this concept where you, it's almost like, I'm trying to explain it. It's like there's a zeitgeist or an overall general opinion of certain arguments for things, whether it be, Christianity or abortion or veganism, all these hot topics, political topics and voting and all sorts of things. There's going to be, the status quo and what's, basically things, pretty much like basic talking points are going to be these things. And so these are things that most people will think of. So like, given any topic, there's going to be basically a set amount of responses that most people are going to have to these topics. So if you're very familiar with like vegan debates, a vegan or maybe a meat eater will only say a certain amount of things before they've pretty much reached the capacity of like what somebody generally will reason to about these things. So, it's kind of weird to say, and I'm not sure if I'm quite getting this point across 100%. So I want to try to get another analogy here. Perhaps you're like in a video game and there's an NPC and it's, it's not good to talk about customers like NPCs, but it's just trying to drive home a point where if they're only so familiar with something and they've only thought about it for so long, there's only going to be a set amount of responses that somebody's going to have to this scenario. So, it's not like they're going to have 10 million responses and they're going to be like calling you out, like debate mode, like, hey, I've checked the window and I know you're lying and I could do this and what are you doing? Are you professional? They're not usually going to do that. They're usually going to just have a few different responses that you can easily, have a counter response for. So let's take the screen example for instance. If you come across a screen that you cannot get out, it's funny, I just think sometimes you see people inside and you think they're like talking about you or something, but they're probably not. But so you see maybe a screen or something that you're not exactly able to take out, and you use my method where you say, hey, I'm not able to take this screen out. What would you like to do? So a customer may be like, hey, I've taken that screen out before. Why don't you give it another try? That can be a response. It can also be a response where it's like, hey, that's perfectly reasonable. You don't have to take that screen out. We'll just skip that window for today. That's also a response they could have. They could also have a response where they maybe freak out, but that's way less common. So it's not something you necessarily have to be planning for right up front, is like the total freak out mode. 99% of people, and this relates right back to, the NPC thing, 99% of people are just going to have a few basic responses to these situations because they haven't thought about it. Maybe if the customer sat down, and this is another thing, like most customers, they just want clean windows. They don't care about all this drama. It's just us window cleaners that are thinking about, you know, all this like philosophical window cleaning stuff. So the customer, unless they've really thought about it, they're not going to be thinking about any of this stuff. They're just kind of going to give their gut reaction or something they've given before to these types of scenarios. And that can be just like a few different responses that you can easily have comebacks to. And not like comebacks in like the, oh, I'm gonna own this guy mode. It's like comebacks in the, hey, I just want something nice and punchy that I can deliver to them, to explain the scenario, explain the situation, and just, you know, get them in a place of ease about everything going on here. That's really the main goal. You just want everybody to just be in a place of ease and in total understanding in an easy way. Like you don't want to sit there and have to like stutter your way through responses. You just want some quick, punchy things where you can explain yourself, explain the situation, and easily have the customer understand exactly what you're talking about. So in this case, with the screen, if you go up to the customer and you say, hey, your screens are brittle, all right? I'm just warning you, the screens are a little bit brittle, so if the screens don't remove easily, I'm actually going to skip those screens, and what we can do is either you can come to each window with me and I can show you exactly step by step why the screens are not coming out, and you can try to take the screens out yourself if you want. That's an option, and that's all fine and good, but they're probably not going to want that because that's pretty much cutting through all the BS that's possible right then and there. So, and this gets into like a whole nother topic, which I could definitely get into, but maybe in a different video. But that response there is basically going to cut through all the BS, saying, hey, these screens are brittle, these screens are a bit rough, so I'll give you a couple options and you can just put the ball in their court. You can field them a question. Hey, what would you like me to do in this scenario here? A, B, or C. And just leave it there. Maybe you don't even have a C, maybe you just have an A and a B, and you just give them those two options and say, hey, here's your options, what would you like me to do? How would you like to proceed? Or maybe, you know, the third option is they suggest a solution, and it clears everything right up. Because occasionally that can happen, you know, customers can be very smart people as well. Sometimes, you know, you shouldn't put it past yourself where you know everything, right? Because trust me, I've been there where maybe you're coming across a scenario. I'm just looking up at this window and it doesn't. Oh, it's just the reef in there. Okay. You're coming across a scenario where you've been in this scenario 1,000 times. You know the answer and everything. And pretty much you think you know everything. But, you know, occasionally a customer will correct you and they'll be like, hey, I know how to take these screens out and I can actually do it for you. Would you like to see it? And if you get snarky, if you're like, no, it's either option A or B, I know how to take out the screens, they're either brittle or you're stupid. If you just go into debate bro mode, you know, nothing good is gonna come of that. So I would not ever put it past yourself that you can learn something from the customer. You can learn something about window cleaning from the customer. How cool is that? I would, never put it past yourself that you can learn stuff. Yeah, so I would also be totally prepared for that that response where they're like, hey, I actually know how to do this. Would you like to see? And you could be like, hey, yeah, teach me how to take out that window screen, no doubt. So, and that's not a bad thing at all. Learning some stuff from the customer is always cool. The reason why you could get like that, and I could see exactly why you'd get like that, is because most people's suggestions are just total crap. Most people suggest, and that's a little bit mean, but it's almost like when you're in some trade or in some business, or you work somewhere for a while, especially when you work with in like a service industry where you're interacting with customers, there'll always be like some sort of like industry joke that'll happen. Like for window cleaners, it's like, oh, you missed a spot there, sir. So yeah, occasionally their suggestions are kind of like that, where it's like, all right, nice, man. Where like you've heard it 1,000 times and it's maybe kind of a good suggestion, but like you've seen it, you've heard it, you don't really need the advice kind of deal. Which, you know, you don't want to ever knock somebody for just trying to help out. But occasionally as well, you can like get jaded by that fact, and you're just thinking like, all right, they're like, most of these customers don't know what they're talking about. I'm just going to do my own thing and not listen to the customer. But occasionally, yeah, that'll get you in trouble, because sometimes they know much more than you about the scenario. So you never want to think you've learned everything or anything like that. And man, I'm gonna get to another job. It's getting a little dark out here. And of course, with the colder weather comes the kinky hoses. And that's not something I miss about winter window cleaning in the slightest. So that's about, that's the end of this job here. I'm just going to be wrapping up and moving on to the next one. I might have to reschedule it because I don't want it to be too dark by the time I get over there. But it might be a little bit dark. And obviously to disconnect all this stuff, it's just the opposite of the beginning of the video where we set it up. So, yeah. Guys, let me know in the comments what you thought of today's video. I think it was a bit of a spicy one. Ooh. We've covered a lot of in-depth topics, a lot of tips and tricks. This is just a video full, packed, chock full of insider tips and secrets about the window cleaning situation. And I don't think I actually finished some of my thoughts on that, on every single topic. I don't think it's all closed off, but it's easy for me to, you know, make analogies and then think of other stuff, and then you're off on a tangent. So without getting on any more tangents, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe, and comment on this video if you found any value. This is Cleaning PhD. I'll see you guys in the next video.